There's this lovely little trend making its round on social media right now, and it's very popular among crafty folk, particularly crafty girlies, in which people are showing off their assortment of hobbies along to the song When Will My Life Begin by Tangled, which is a staple of modern classics, really. But along with this trend has come just the teensiest little smidge of controversy, which seems unlikely because it's a very harmless trend, but we are on the internet, I suppose. I will let you read the comments for yourself to get an idea of what I'm talking about. So you can kind of see what is going on here. There seems to be this inexplicable notion that having an array of hobbies is somehow a luxury, which I would say is true, but only in the sense that it is a luxury to live in a first world country and not be plagued by disease or famine and have the time and opportunity to exercise our hobbies. Aside from that, however, it's pretty much fair game, isn't it? I mean, aside from a few of these more niche activities, such as the horseback riding, the photography, the travel, which isn't really a hobby so much as a human experience, I would say that having hobbies is quite cost effective. In my case, it actually even saves me money, on gifts and decor, and I mend my clothing so I don't have to throw it away and get new ones. So how possibly could people be getting this idea in their head that practicing arts and hobbies is somehow a luxury afforded to only the upper class? I mean, I can't possibly imagine where they're getting this perception. It has come to my attention that social media is ruining having hobbies, maybe? So I have been aware of this vast subcategory of consumerisms for quite some time, but what has shocked me is that as of late, it seems as though they are allowed to be completely free of scrutiny and are oftentimes defended, whilst the former category of crafters, the Rapunzel girlies, we're going to call them, are jabbed with these passive-aggressive, "oh, I wish I was that rich" remarks. And I feel like we have our wires crossed a little bit, so we're gonna get down to the bottom of this. If I'm reading the situation correctly, it seems that TikTok or, Reels or whatever has begun to spoil hobby culture with its over-consumerism attitude about literally every human experience ever. And to be fair, I cannot blame TikTok as if it's some omnipotent, what's the word? Whatever. I can't blame TikTok as if it's some, bigger entity. It is made up of people, and those people are the ones that are pushing this completely unrealistic hobby narrative. Wow, this sounds so much more dramatic than it is. This over-consumerist rampage rears its ugly face in practically every online space, whether it be for crochet, fashion, decor, gaming, cooking, coloring, taking a bath, and Lord knows what TikTok has done to reading. But before we get in too deep, I will address the elephant in the room, which is, it's not really my business. But is it, though? The most common rebuttal against pointing out these man-made horrors beyond comprehension is that if it is not your house, not your hobby, not your money, it should therefore be not your business. And in many instances, I agree. I wholeheartedly believe that if someone has a hobby and passion that they love, they should be allowed to pour as much time, money, and attention into it as they please, and should never be discouraged from doing so. However, these extravagant, ridiculous, and preposterous displays and performances of having a hobby that are really just masqueraded shopping addictions, in these cases, it definitely begins to become our business because this affects everyone. Let's be honest, it's really not great for the planet. And before I get into this little mini conversation, let me back up. I am not coming at this from a holier-than-thou standpoint at all, to any degree. I am not a zero-waste individual by any means, but my rule of thumb when it comes to anything environmental is that if it is exceedingly reasonable, and especially if it's easy for me to just not do something that is hurting the environment in some way, I will simply not do that thing. So that is why I don't use paper plates, I don't generate myself as a Barbie doll, and I will use my $10 toaster until it passes away. Going on year 3. To those who believe the not my circus, not my monkey attitude applies to all scenarios, however, regardless of the severity of how excessive it has gotten, to that I do have a counter argument, which is give those popular de-influencing you videos a try. Just see what you think of them. I find that in many cases, the people who are de-influencing you, most of the time I find them to be quite enlightening. Seldom are these videos ever shaming the viewer so much as informing them so that they can make more informed decisions going on. Because really, what does one have to gain from promoting low consumerism? Most of the time, nothing at all. Contrarily, the companies that churn out these mass-produced books and hobby accessories have a lot to gain from keeping the consumerist mindset alive and well. I would argue that refraining from these multi-$1,000 yarn, coloring, and book hauls is a really easy way to be a little bit more environmentally conscious. And it'll save you a chunk of change, a good chunk of change. As a matter of fact, I kind of get a headache watching these hauls, but we're all a little curious how much is being spent, right? I will bypass the headache for science. And yes, the first on the chopping block is BookTok. In order to fill your summer TBR, which stands for to be read according to my research, you'll need to drop a nice little $256 on this stack of books alone. Guys, have you heard of a library? Okay, and listen, I understand. These are just people's hobbies, and I'm not shaming you for going and buying books, but BookTok has created this really bizarre culture around reading. It's become a little bit cultish. There's a lot of peer pressure to read a certain amount. There's a lot of looking down on people for how much they don't read. And you know that phrase, there is an argument to be made against the commonly heard phrase, all reading is good reading. And there was a time in which I did not entertain that argument, but that has definitely changed since the rise of BookTok. And listen, a lot of amazing novels and authors' careers have spawned off of self-publishing, but are we getting, dare I say, too comfortable with publishing on Amazon? You know what? This is not my circus, not my monkey. I am stepping out from this conversation. Let's get back to what we were talking about. So this yarn stash is inducing unpleasant heart palpitations just by watching it, and I don't even want to price gauge it, but let's give it a go regardless. Okay, so these gradient cakes here, assuming she clipped a coupon at Michael's for, say, 30% off and did not pay a shipping fee. After taxes, they're priced at about $9 a piece. She has approximately 36 or more of them shown in the video, so that's about $330 alone for just those cakes. Now I do crochet, so I'm relying on my personal estimates to gauge out the cost of the remaining product. So, giving full benefit of the doubt, we will again assume that the remainder of this yarn was all couponed, shipping was free. This would price each bin, one of those big totes, around $70, each drawer, I want to say about $15, and each of those tote bags, $30-ish. So we can bring our grand total estimate up to $1,040 conservatively for this room of yarn. And crochet is a hobby that requires so much time and patience and love, and where will this woman find all the time to go through that large of a stash? It almost makes you wonder if the addiction is the yarn shopping or the crocheting. So moving on to Moving on. The most popular brand of markers that I've seen in these videos are these Ohuhu markers, and I actually do own some of these, so as someone who owns them, I have the right to say, you do not need this many. Why do you have so many? I will prove it to you. Hold on. Both of these art pieces were made by myself. I'm going to try and get them in frame. Can you see them? Okay, so both of these were made by myself. I'm not to give myself a pat on the back here. The color range is pretty good. There are lights, there are darks, there are even lighting effects, and my point in saying this is that you don't need that many colors. Because if you develop, some skills in cross-hatching and color combinations, you can create a vibrant array of colors and shades and hues without needing the $100 pack. You don't need to drop $70 on the markers, you don't need to drop $60 on the book. you're good. Start off small. You know, I'll show you my markers. Hold on. I got these when I was like 13 on Wish. You guys remember that site? I got these when I was like 13 and they cost me less than $20. And there's a 36 count of them. And now that I'm saying this out loud, these are probably not real Ohuhu markers, but who cares? They still work. And maybe having colors that don't match the caps whatsoever has made me more skilled somehow. Anyways, if you want to get started, go to Five Below, get creative, get started that way. And if you decide that you really love the hobby, just upgrade as you go along, or, you know, keep the same set for 7 years. Doesn't matter. I'm sure you are aware, but I do feel compelled to remind you, I am not shaming having hobbies. I'm not even shaming spending, you know, kind of in weird ways on your hobbies, which I have another example for this. Hold on. Okay, do you see this lovely, lovely little thing? I actually did not purchase this. My grandma purchased this. Shout out grandma. I did not need this. A crocheter does not need this, but I saw it online and I really, really liked it. And I just knew that I was going to lose my mind if I had it. And it looks pretty on my coffee table and I use it every day and I crochet every day, even if it's just for a couple minutes in the evening. I love it and I love it so much, and it is one of my most used items. I did not need it and it wasn't the cheapest. So is it a little silly to have? Maybe, but I think it's completely reasonable because I'm going to keep this and I'm going to use it. As a matter of fact, one of the pegs started to come off and I hot glued that baby to a crisp. So this will get lots of love. I am not shaming buying weird stuff or spending money on your hobbies. It is just this excessive silliness that has created this notion that having hobbies is somehow expensive when it does not need to be. You can start small, see if you like it, and then buy more as you really learn to love and get invested into the hobby, rather than doing this vicious TikTok cycle, which is, ooh, I like this, ooh, new shiny thing, repeat, repeat, repeat. As a matter of fact, just to help you out, I will be demonstrating throughout the rest of this video. I'm dedicating it to showing you how I live as both a Rapunzel girly and also a cheap bastard. When I began crocheting, I purchased a giant skein of white worsted weight yarn from Walmart for like $7 and one pack of bamboo hooks for I think $5. As a newbie, I had no need for a large variety of sizes and I was just trying to get to learn the ropes of the craft. Or, you know, the strings. Ha! Okay, with that initial skein, I started making these little Hello Kitty purses, and I could tell I was going to stick with the hobby because I really loved doing it. So then I went and I purchased more colors to make the purses, and then I waited for Michael's to have a sale, and then I went and got more colors, but it was still kind of expensive. It was like a $70 run. And so that was when I realized Facebook Marketplace existed, and after a lot of patience, I got my whole stash that you see here for only $20. So hold out, it can happen. Also, here's my cat. Sewing is one of those crafts that really needs more creatives in the community. I'm not knocking the current communities, but there's this obsession with order I find in sewing spaces, exact patterns, exact fabrics, etc. Actually, I have a little rant and I'm gonna force you to listen to it, so buckle up. A few months ago, I Frankensteined an old graphic tee and an old flannel to be my first sewing project ever, and posted the piece to r/sewing. The admin blocked the post and told me that the construction details were not detailed enough, so I went in and I added more details, because I think what I wrote was just, oh, I trace over clothes, and that was kind of it, so I added more details. Then they blocked it again, and I said, okay, why did you block it? And they said, well, you weren't specific enough with what fabric you used to make the project. Well, I used an old graphic tee and an old flannel t-shirt. And these people never got back to me, and I never got to post my first ever sewing project. Flash forward a few months later, I went to post my graphic tee flip projects, which I have a video on that. You should go watch it if you haven't seen it already. And once again, it got blocked for not including the details of how I made every single shirt, and I was not allowed to post a tutorial on how I made every single shirt because that would have fallen under self-promotion. So I left and I went to r/sewing world and posted it there. And I almost immediately received this very sweet comment that said, this is what sewing should be about, making it into something of your own. And yes, thank you, sweet Reddit user. This kind soul had no idea about my r/sewing sewing fiasco, but they could just tell that this is not the norm for sewing communities, and I propose that it should be. So if this attitude is daunting to you, I implore you to ignore some of the current sewing spaces and make it into an art of your own. What were we talking about? Yes. Okay. It can be practical and affordable. The biggest hurdle to overcome is getting your machine. I will admit I did create some sewing pieces before getting a machine, but it was difficult up until I got that machine. But the machine doesn't have to be the fanciest one on the market, doesn't have to be the most expensive one, which is not to say I don't love my plastic machine. My grandma also got me this one. Shout out, Grandma. And if you still have an itch to alter your clothes but you can't afford the machine yet, try embroidery. That's a good little gateway. As for cloth itself, I scavenged my local buy nothing groups for tablecloths, curtains, and extra large t-shirts. Currently, my stash should last for months to come without needing to make any purchases. Painting is easily the most cost-effective hobby out there. Michaels has an excellent clearance canvas selection that I take advantage of frequently. I get my paint from Walmart. These brushes here I've had for at least 6 years, and this palette I've had since I was like 10 years old, so you can use these things for a very long time. If you are an avid painter and manage to plow through 1 tube of paint per month, that's only like $3 a month worth of paint, in addition to the initial maybe $40 to $50 of a kind of like a down payment on your paints and your canvases and your brushes to get started. So yeah, if I would recommend a very cost-effective hobby for aspiring artists, 100% painting is the way to go. We already touched upon the price of these Ohuhu markers, but I have a 36 pack that was certainly under $20 after shipping at the time of purchase, which would have been about 7 years ago. I'm sure the prices have gone up now. Either these are fake Ohuhus or the quality has also significantly improved since I bought them. I feel as though colored pencils are within the same vein as markers, so I will address them jointly. As mentioned earlier, I do not think you need a wide array of colors to make art with any medium. Obviously, this applies most directly to paint because colors can be mixed on a separate palette, but the same is done with markers and pencils. My marker drawings frequently utilize cross-hatching and negative space to create lighter hues or gray backdrops to create darker ones. I do have a really nice set of Prismacolors here, which I was gifted when I was very young. I was in like 5th grade or something. As for paper, I have found again that great sketchbooks do exist at the old Five Below and Walmart, although I'm a bit of a hypocrite because here I have this XL pad, this Canon XL, and gosh, I do love this thing. If you want to drop a few extra bucks, it is worth it. The world of cosplay is possibly the most misunderstood hobby in terms of having a paywall to experience it. In case you have not noticed the common theme by now, here it is. Thrift stores. A good local thrift shop plus picking up on a few alteration techniques is all you really need to make a cosplay come to life. Additionally, use scenery to your advantage. For example, this Elizabeth from BioShock Infinite cosplay is one of my most beloved photo shoots of all time, and lots of viewers commented upon my resemblance of the character. Here's the catch. I actually don't resemble Elizabeth at all. However, because it was shot in a turn-of-the-century museum, and I made an active effort to embody her personality, the energy of Elizabeth in BioShock is radiant and translated through the photos. This energy distracts from the homemade quality of my cosplay and creates more individuality in place of picture-perfect recreation. So with a little bit of creativity, a few hours scavenging Google Maps for a suitable location, and another afternoon allotted to thorough thrift store scavenging, this cosplay cost me less than $10 to pull off. Granted, I did own the skirt beforehand, but the skirt was only $13. All the other elements were handmade, which yes, does take some time, but it is insanely worth it. So those are all the hobbies that I love, that I am the most dedicated to, that are super cost effective. Some of the hobbies I would say are worth it if you eventually want to invest in, but they definitely do kind of have like a at the gate price, a bit of a higher price, would be photography, videography, tabletop games like Magic the Gathering, which are addictive and fun and so amazing because you can go to shops and meet new people, but it's really easy to spend a lot of money really fast. All I'm saying is that these are some of the like pay-to-play hobbies. And I would also say gaming kind of falls into that category as well, although I cheat and I just watch someone else play the game because it frees up a bit of my time and my hands to do other tasks. Sue me. The moral of the story is that hobbies should not and largely do not live behind paywalls. If you believe otherwise, then maybe these hobby influencers have gotten to your head. And that's perfectly alright, but don't let it stop you. The arts, crafts, and everything in between are for everyone to enjoy. And that is all I have for you guys today. So please go do your hobbies. They are good for you and good for your brain. And good night.